Hey, welcome back to Big Boss Biscuits. Grab your biscuits and tune in. Today is going to be deliciously spicy. I'm your host, Kirsten Penalosa. And before we dive in, I want to take a second to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Whether this is your first episode or your 10th, I do not take it for granted that you chose to spend your commute, your lunch break, or your Saturday morning walk with me. That means something. Now, today's episode is a solo one, just you and me. And I'm starting with a question. If most of the people listening to leadership podcasts are women, why aren't most of the people on that podcast women? I dug into my own data to find out. And what I found wasn't just a podcast problem. It's a leadership problem. Now, a little bit of background. I didn't start Big Boss Biscuits because I had it all figured out. I started it because I was fed up. And apparently I wasn't the only one. See, I spent years in the corporate world, and what I kept running into over and over again was leadership that was either toxic or dysfunctional, uninspiring, unkind, or frankly, just all of the above. Leaders who managed through their own insecurities and fear rather than lifting others up. Organizations that said people are our greatest asset on paper, and then treated those same people like line items on a spreadsheet. I experienced it. I watched it happen to people I care about. And I hear about it or read about it all the time on LinkedIn. And frankly, I got tired of it. So I did what probably any reasonable person does when they're frustrated. I started a Ted Lasso Leadership Mastermind group. Because if you're going to talk about what good leadership looks like, you might as well do it through the lens of a show that takes leadership more seriously than many companies do. And yes, I mean a fictional football coach from Kansas who shows up with biscuits and inexhaustible belief in people. But here's what I want you to notice. The most compelling leadership in that entire show, it isn't just Ted. It's also Rebecca and Keeley. Rebecca Walton walks into a room she owns, by the way, and grown men in suits still find a way to make it about her looks. There's a moment in an episode where another football club owner essentially tells her he forgot why he liked her having in the room until he saw what she was wearing. Not because she was bright and a successful business owner. No. But she doesn't flinch. She doesn't shrink. She stands there, owns the space, and leads anyway. That is not a fictional experience. Almost every woman watching that scene recognized it immediately because they've lived it. And then there's Keely Jones, who the world spent years dismissing as just a hot, maybe silly, goofy model, until she built her own PR firm, sat at her own table, and redefined what it means to lead authentically and through your own values. Now, what makes Rebecca and Keely extraordinary isn't just their individual power. It's what they do for each other. They lift, they celebrate, they hold each other accountable without tearing each other down. They are, in the truest sense, each other's sponsors. And that is the kind of leadership culture I'm here to talk about. Now, the mastermind group was fun. It was real, it was psychologically safe. People could actually be vulnerable in there without it being weaponized against them later. Ooh, novel concept, I know. And somewhere along the way, people started saying, you should do a podcast. That's when my imposter syndrome showed up, right on schedule. What do I have to contribute that isn't already out there? There are already so many good podcasts existing in this world. I'm not good at this. Who am I to think people want to hear from me? Sound familiar? It should, because we're going to talk a lot about that mean little voice today. But here's the thing. The request to do a podcast kept coming. The validation kept showing up. And eventually I had to ask myself, am I going to tell other leaders to be brave and then sit here playing small myself? No. So I left. I walked away from a corporate 9-to-5 job and environment. I left behind the toxic workplaces and the bad bosses and the performative leadership. And I started Big Boss Biscuits to do one thing: share the stories of human-centered leaders through the lens of Ted Lasso, with the hope that somewhere in some organization, a leader hears something on the show and decides to do better. Because when people thrive, businesses thrive. And I have the data to prove it. Ted Lasso quotes, well, he thinks it's Walt Whitman, but it's actually, I don't even know who it's really from. But the quote still lands. Be curious, not judgmental. And I think about Rebecca applying that every time a man in a boardroom questions whether she belongs there. I think about Keely applying it every time someone looks at her background and decides the story before she's even spoken. Curiosity instead of judgment. How many of us lead that way? How many of us walk into a meeting with a direct report and ask, what do you need today to thrive and be successful? Instead of deciding what box they fit in before they've even opened their mouth. Because here's what the research tells us. And this is a hill I will die on. When people thrive, businesses thrive. Gallup found that companies with high employee engagement outperform their peers by up to 202% in performance. Organizations where people feel like they belong see a 56% increase in job performance and a 50% reduction in turnover risk, plus a 75% reduction in sick days. Come on, this is not fluffy stuff. This is the profit and loss strategy. It is a real business strategy. And yet we have entire industries, entire C-suites, leadership cultures that are still running the old playbook. The one that squeezes performance out of fear for loss instead of cultivating it through belonging. And that's why I'm here. That's what Big Boss Biscuits is about. So 10 episodes in, I pulled the numbers, even if a friend of mine told me, never look at your podcast numbers. But here's what I found. My listeners, you, are 52% women. My audience skews 35 to 59. You are mid-career, decision-making age, professionally established women who are choosing to spend time thinking about leadership. You are showing up. You are hungry for this. And my guests, their majority have been men. Now, I want to be clear. Every single guest I've had on this has been brilliant and generous, and the conversations have been real and inspiring and thought-provoking. That's not the issue. The issue is the pipeline. When I put out a call for guests, only 40% of applicants are women. And of those women who apply, who raise their hand and say, yes, I want to be part of this podcast, only 16% follow through. 16%. Let me say that again. Of the women who express interest in being a guest, fewer than 1 in 5 actually show up. Meanwhile, my audience is majority women. The irony is not lost on me. And it is not a coincidence. It is a symptom of something much bigger. And that's where I'm going next. So let's talk about the research and what it tells us about why women aren't taking up space, even when the space is explicitly offered to them. So first, imposter syndrome. That feeling that you're a fraud, that you don't really deserve to be in the room, that eventually someone is going to figure you out. This is not a buzzword. This is a documented, measurable phenomenon. A 2024 meta-analysis reviewed 115 studies and over 40,000 participants and confirmed women experience imposter syndrome more frequently and more intensely than men, across cultures and industries. And here's what I want you to hear. This is not a personal failing. This is a rational response to an environment that has historically told women their accomplishments were exceptions. Their presence was conditional, and their authority was always up for debate. Reshma Saujani, founder of Girls Who Code, said it beautifully. We are raising our girls to be perfect, and we're raising our boys to be brave. And now we wonder why women hesitate. Second, the broken ladder. McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report, one of the most comprehensive gender studies in corporate America, by the way, found that for every 100 men promoted to a manager, only 87 women are promoted. Not 99, not 95, 87. And that gap at the very first step of the ladder compounds every single year. Surprise, surprise. By the time you reach the C-suite, women hold just 28% of senior leadership positions. Not because women aren't qualified, because their rungs were already missing or broken before they even started climbing. The third part, airtime. Research shows that in meetings and professional settings, women are interrupted more, credited less, and given less speaking time than their male counterparts. Harvard Business Review found that men interrupt women 33% more than they interrupt other men. There's even a term for when a woman says something and it goes unacknowledged, only for a man to then say the same thing minutes later and receive the praise. It's called not repeating, it's called heaping. And if you've never experienced it, I'm genuinely happy for you. But if you laughed just now with a hint of pain, you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That kind of dismissal is real, but so is what you build in spite of it. And fourth, this one matters deeply for where we go from here, the sponsorship gap. There's an important distinction between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor gives you advice. A sponsor puts your name in the room when you're not in it. Sponsors advocate, not just advice. And study after study shows that women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. Men get champions, women get counsel. This is exactly what Rebecca and Keely model for each other, and what makes their relationship so rare and so radical. They aren't just friends. They are each other's loudest advocates in rooms the other one hasn't entered yet. That is what allyship between women looks like in practice. Not competition, not comparison, sponsorship. Melody Hobson, chair of Starbucks and co-CEO of Ariel Investments, put it plainly. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And too many women aren't at the table. Not because they don't belong there, but because no one pulled out the chair. Now, here's what I need you to hear, because this is where we stop the narrative that this is a woman's problem. Guess what? It's not. It is a systems problem, a culture problem, a leadership problem. It belongs to all of us. And Brené Brown said something that I kept coming back to. Daring leaders who live into their values are never silent about things. This is a hard thing, and I don't want to be silent about it. Here's a business case, because if the human case isn't moving the needle for you, let's talk dollars. McKinsey's Diversity Wins report found that companies in the top quartile for gender diversity are 25% more likely to achieve above average profitability than their peers. 25%! That's not a rounding error. Come on, this is strategy. And yet, we're still leaving those voices, those perspectives, that performance on the table. Or more accurately, we're not even inviting them to the table. Which brings me back to my 16%. I keep thinking about that number. Wow, 16%. And here's what I want to say to the woman who applied, who raised her hand and then quietly put it back down. I see you. I know that little voice that says, who am I to be on a podcast? I know the calculation that runs in the background. What if I say something wrong? What if I'm not expert enough? What if people judge me? I know what it feels like to look at an opportunity and think, maybe when I'm more ready. I know it because I lived it, because I was told that that's how it is. That exact voice is the reason this podcast almost didn't exist. And I'm standing here 11 episodes in telling you the voice lied. Here's the thing about more ready. It is a finish line that moves. And there's a seat at this table that has your name on it. Not because I'm generous, but because your voice, your experience, your leadership story is the content. That is exactly what the majority of the audience showed up to hear. Think about Keely walking into a boardroom where no one expected her to stay. Think about Rebecca taking ownership of a football club in a sport that didn't want her there. They didn't wait until the room felt safe. They made the room safer by walking in. And then they turned around and held the door open for each other. That's what I'm asking you to do. Walk in and hold the door. And to the men listening, and I love you for being here, I need something from you. We all do. We need you to be the Ted Lasso in your organization. We need you to be the one who notices who isn't speaking in the meeting and creates space. The one who says, I think we should hear from so-and-so, and actually means it. The one who repeats a woman's idea with her name attached. The one who recommends her for the keynote, the promotion, the board seat, not instead of a qualified man, but alongside him. That is allyship. That is sponsorship. That is the work. And to every leader listening, look at your table right now. Not metaphorically. Think about your last 5 high visibility meetings, your last 5 key promotions, your last 5 external appearances or speaker opportunities. Who was there? And more importantly, who wasn't? The data will tell you something. The question is whether you're willing to listen. So here's what I'm asking. If you're a woman in leadership at any level in any industry, I want you on this podcast. Not when you're ready, not when you have a perfect story with a neat bow on it. I want you now, exactly as you are, with your real experience and your real lessons and your real voice. Apply, show up, claim the seat. If you're a man in leadership who believes in building workplaces where everyone can thrive, come on and say so publicly. Your voice on this matters. Your advocacy matters. Don't just believe it in private. And if you're a leader, any leader, who is looking around your organization and realizing that table isn't as full as it could be, let's talk about that. That's exactly the work I do. Because when people thrive, businesses thrive. The data says so. Rebecca and Keeley say so. Ted Lasso says so. And 11 episodes in, I say so. So grab your biscuits, friends, and this time bring a friend to the table. Now, before I let you go, a little bit about me for those who are newer to the show. My name is Kirsten Penalos, and outside of this podcast, I'm a leadership coach and organizational consultant. I work with leaders and organizations who are serious about building cultures where people don't just perform, they belong, where they don't just show up, where they matter. I work with executives who are navigating high-stakes transitions, teams who are rebuilding trust after hard seasons, and organizations who are ready to lead differently. So if today's episode resonated with you, if you heard something that made you go, or made you uncomfortable in the best kind of way, or made you think about someone on your team who maybe could benefit from coaching and sponsorship, let's work together. You can find me at kirstenpenalosa.com, on LinkedIn and Instagram, and right here every other week on Big Boss Biscuits. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for caring about this. Leadership is hard and it matters. And the fact that you're spending time thinking about it, that already makes you a better leader today than you were yesterday. Now, go lead like Ted, like Rebecca, like Keeley, with heart, with curiosity, with a belief in the people around you that is bigger than their doubts about themselves. Pull out the chair, say their name, be the reason someone shows up. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next episode.